Michael John McKee was born in 1985 in Gering, Nebraska, growing up with his mom, dad, and two older sisters. Like many musicians, Michael became interested in music at an early age, but it wasn't as accessible as you might have thought. With an immediate interest in drums, Michael was encouraged to start instead on the piano. It wasn't until his freshman year of high school that he got his first full drum set. After graduating from University of Wyoming with a double major in both philosophy and sociology, Michael spent time abroad teaching students in both China and Honduras. Eventually, though, he made his way back stateside, landing in Denver in 2010. Michael has played in several successful bands in the local scene, including the Bimarinal, Glowing House, Kid Reverie, and more recently launched his project Helicopter Copter. He describes Helicopter Copter as a series of sound-forward mixed media art projects, incorporating experimental processes, materials, and collaborations. Michael lives in Denver with his partner Eileen, dog Rhino, and 3 chickens in his backyard, and works as the outreach coordinator for Swallow Hill Music in Inglewood. Here are some of Michael's stories.
Cool. My name is Michael John McKee. I play drums in Strange Americans. I've been in the band maybe half of the life of the band, 3/4 of the life of the band, 6-7 years. What other projects do I play with? I play with Paul DeHaven in his solo project. Sometimes I'll play with Matt Hoffman in his solo project, New Mexican. I used to play in a band called Kid Reverie, and I'm still kind of part of that band, but that band is currently inactive. I have my own project that is like multimedia art, different types of things called Helicopter Copter.
And you just released an album.
That's right. I just released like a 30-minute EP, 3-song, minimalist percussion instrumental record.
People can listen to that on Spotify?
They can, yeah. It's on Spotify and Apple Music and iTunes and all the avenues of listening these days.
Very cool. Well,
Yeah.
We are trying this for the first time, a little video, talking about music that shaped our lives growing up. Has music always been a part of your life? Like, was that just a part of everyday living growing up?
Yes and no. Growing up, I went to church with my family, and we did choir in church. We did the handbells as well. I also tried out for like a kids choir, and I was in the kids choir.
Singing?
Yeah, singing. I forget exactly what it was. It wasn't associated with school or church. It was this separate thing, almost like you'd play, club basketball or something. It was club choir. I did that. Yeah. And then kind of as I grew up through school, there was music classes. And in 4th grade, we had the option of joining band class. And I really wanted to play drums in band class. And
where did that come from? What drew you to the drums?
There was a couple things. There was a drum set in my neighborhood. I lived in a small town in Gering, Nebraska. Small town of Gering, Nebraska, in kind of a small neighborhood. And my best friend's brother had a drum set, and he'd play in the house. And I thought it was, I don't know, just a super powerful, cool, aggressive instrument. And it was always, something I was drawn to for maybe kind of like a more visceral, guttural reason. And then going to like basketball games, high school basketball games as a kid with my dad, there was a pep band, and the pep band had a drum set player, and they'd play, classic rock tunes, Smoke on the Water, stuff like that. Proud to Mary. And the drummer of that group, his name was Tyler Sandberg. He had this drum solo in front of an entire auditorium, and it was like such an exciting moment. And I thought, man, I bet I could do that. So anyways, I wanted to join the percussion section in band class in 4th grade. And my mom was like, well, you know, the band director needs all of his drummers to take 2 years of piano. So I suffered through 2 years of piano lessons.
Yeah.
And my piano teacher, her name was Gail Barnwell. She was a badass. She was really good at kind of understanding that I wanted to make my own music. So she gave me a lot of fundamentals and encouraged me to write my own songs.
That's cool. You know, it's funny because I can remember the pep rally and the drummer, Brad Novotny. And he was a senior in high school drumming on the back of a pickup truck as it drove through our gym. And I just remember thinking, and he was in a really cool band out of Towson, Maryland. And I just remember thinking, man, I was like, man, I wish I could be in a band that cool. So that's really funny because I had a very similar experience.
Driving on the back of a pickup truck. That's funny. Yeah. So
cool. So back to your family. Like, what was, you know, riding in the car with your dad? Where was the radio tuned? You know, was the radio on in the house? Were there artists that your dad, you know, you knew your dad liked in those young years?
That's a good question. Not exactly. I don't remember the radio or records being part of my childhood. I mean, we had a stereo system and we had records, but the most vivid memory of listening to music with my family was driving from home to the lake where we would go swimming and tubing and boating and whatever. Yeah. And my dad had this box set of oldies. I don't remember the name of the box set, but it was, I think, cassette tapes. And it was kind of like best songs 1952 to 1956, best songs 1957, etc. Like for like 3 decades. So there was like 12 different cassettes. And I remember the Beach Boys just being the most badass band. And they had like a Beach Boys track on every cassette. And it just seemed so like buttery. Their vocals were so buttery and the rhythms were super exciting. Yeah, so.
Well, that's cool. And I know one of the Beach Boys songs is on your playlist, which is on Spotify right now under Strange Americans. Quarantunes series, Volume 4 is Michael John McKee's childhood songs. But you talked to me about a story earlier, a little bit younger maybe, with your sisters listening on a Fisher Price record player.
Yeah, Fisher Price record player. One of maybe the first memory I have of listening to music as a human being was, I think we were in my bedroom. We were listening to a 7-inch vinyl record of Johnny Cash's Ring of Fire on like a Fisher Price record player. And in retrospect, I think we should have never gotten rid of that stuff. I think it's probably pretty valuable right now. But I had this memory of listening to this record and we were kind of like dancing and playing in my bedroom. And I had this kind of like nervous feeling that if we got too involved with the music, it would like take us over and like take us into the record player. I had a very vivid imagination, and maybe some of this was like inspired by church growing up.
You were pretty young when this happened, right?
Yeah, I was very young. I was like maybe 3 or 4. Yeah. But I remember loving, but also being very scared of the Ring of Fire. That down, 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 the Ring of Fire was just like terrifying, but equally incredible.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
So you've got a bunch of songs on your playlist, 19. They're really good. I've actually already listened to it 3 times. I got really into this idea. But what are some other songs, you know, pick out a couple songs or stories, you know, were there any songs that were related to live concert experiences, or, you know, any other funny stories behind any other tunes you picked there?
There's a lot of funny stories. The first memory I have of taking music on a Walkman and like walking around the neighborhood, and man, I'm cool because I'm listening to this cool music.
The yellow one? Was it yellow, or did you have like the gray one?
I had a black one.
Black one? Okay.
Yeah. and I don't even think it was mine. It was probably my sister's, but it was Amy Grant.
Oh yeah, baby, baby. I definitely
Baby,
listened to
baby.
that and enjoyed it.
Oh man, I listened to that song again, and I was actually like, "This is not bad. This is not a bad song." And my musical tastes were pretty confined to what I was experiencing through my older sisters at that time. So by the time I had like my own money and I was able to buy a CD, I bought TLC Waterfalls. It was all over MTV, and my sisters were like, "This is cool music." So that was the first CD I bought.
Now this is in Nebraska, right?
Yeah.
Now, where were they getting their music from? Was it mostly like pop radio, or were they buying CDs, or where were they getting their music from? MTV?
MTV, yeah. We didn't have like a pop. I don't think we really had pop radio stations. Definitely didn't have hard rock or metal or rap or hip hop, anything like that. There was country, there was classic rock, there was NPR, maybe there was a classical station, and then there was like 8 Christian radio stations.
Like preaching or playing like gospel music?
Gospel music, contemporary gospel music.
Yeah.
I remember every time I saved up $10, I would ask my mom to take me to Target to buy a new CD. So I think I spent, man, I don't know, probably $200.
To Target. What years were this? Because I don't remember Target around till like 96 or 97.
Yeah, it was probably then. I'm bad with timelines, so I would have to really think about the years, but I think maybe I was like 12, 13.
Okay. You're like 4 years younger than me, right?
Yeah. I'm 34.
Yeah. That's great.
I'd have to look that up too.
On the dot.
Yeah.
All right. Did you ever make a mixtape?
Mixtapes weren't a thing by the time I got around to it, but CDs, mixed CDs. Okay. Yeah, a playlist was definitely a thing. Made a lot of playlists. Mostly it was playlists that I'd make for my high school girlfriend to make out to.
So they were romantic. I was going to ask if you'd made the romantic mixtape. You remember any of the songs that were on there? Baby, baby?
I think there was there's probably some Explosions in the Sky. There's probably some Postal Service and probably some Perfect Circle.
I was a big Vertical Horizon guy. Vertical Horizon tunes. That would swim the ladies every time for sure.
Yeah, I was.
Okay, so you're doing the waterfalls dance with TLC. What's the next tune you think of there?
Oh, let's see. I was really into Oasis. I think I bought all Oasis CDs as they came out. But a pivotal point for me was when I first heard Korn on MTV. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like dark, and it compared to everything I'd ever heard, it sounds super aggressive, like violent. And as an angsty preteen boy that was like interested in music and art in a conservative farming community, I was like, oh my God, I think I found where I'm supposed to be. So I got the Korn CD. I think it's called Follow the Leader. And it was pretty, like for me, which was, I don't know, maybe I was like 12, 13. It was pretty dark.
Yeah.
And I remember needing to listen to it very quietly in my bedroom because I was nervous my parents would hear it and I would get in trouble because of how like
Would they not, do you think they would have not appreciated the music, or do you think that was just you being a nervous adolescent?
Maybe the latter. I think my parents gave me a lot of freedom to do what I wanted to do and kind of like play music loud if I wanted to, or I don't know. They obviously let me play drums in the house. It was actually my sisters that were more against me playing drums in the house. So my parents were pretty flexible with what I want to do. I think though it was just like so new and almost felt like a forbidden fruit to me that it was inappropriate to listen to it at any level except very low.
Now, what genre would you put Korn in? I mean, metal or?
Yeah, new metal. I mean, I've you have an identity, and there's all these moments and stories that make up your identity as a human being. And sometimes when you think back on I think back on buying the Korn CD, I think, man, I'm not super proud of like really enjoying that music as a kid. It seems a little silly now.
Sure.
But if you actually go back and listen to it, some of it is really great.
Yeah, I completely agree. So how far down the Korn hole did you go? Like, were you wearing all black? Was your hair long? Like how far did you take this lifestyle?
No, I didn't get that far into it. I've pretty much always dressed the way that I dress now, which is solid colors, not too many labels or brands.
Good man.
I think what's that?
Arc for life.
Arc for life. Goodwill for life. I think the Korn CD was so pivotal for me because it was kind of like it opened up this whole music universe of hard rock and heavy metal. It was actually through Korn and Limp Bizkit and Metallica that I learned about bands like Led Zeppelin and Rush and bands like King Crimson and Yes. And so a lot of those bands for me have really withstood the test of time. Like Led Zeppelin obviously is amazing, and the band Yes, and I still really like Rush, but it also opened me into heavy metal or new metal that I think has aged well, like some of the Deftones records and the Tool records. Even System of a Down is a little picky at times, but some of their records are still good. So yeah, that it's so funny to think about how Korn was like my musical awakening into all the good stuff.
Well, yeah, and even just the fact that you had the desire to even go down the hole, because it's not like doesn't sound like it was really being presented to you and like, here it is, consume it. You actually had to go seek it out.
Yeah.
First concert.
The first concert I ever went to by myself, where I drove to it, was with my good friend Conrad Gunye. He and I went to Bela Fleck and the Flecktones. I don't think I included any Bela Fleck and the Flecktones on this.
We can add it in.
We could add it in. It was a pretty magical concert. It was at Chautauqua, outside of Boulder, wherever Chautauqua is. And those musicians are virtuosic, so everything was kind of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're making these sounds and doing these things as a band. How do their hands move that fast? There was all that. But there was a set break in which Bela Fleck played acoustic banjo by himself on stage. And I don't even know if he had the banjo mic'd. He must have had the banjo mic'd, but it was an acoustic banjo, and it started to rain and thunder. And if you've ever been to Chautauqua, it's not like a perfectly insulated structure.
Right. It's right on the river.
Yeah, and it's like a barn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was pretty fucking magical because Bela Fleck was playing and there'd be like these claps of thunder and he would play off.
Oh, in Boulder. Yeah. He would play off the claps of thunder?
Yeah, it was insane.
That's insane. How old were you? Do you remember how old you were when you went to that show?
I was 16 because I could drive by that point.
And did you keep it clean? Was that also the first joint you smoked?
No. Dude, growing up in Western Nebraska, it was kind of, yeah, I think maybe I was naive, but my impression was you had to know pretty sleazy people to get any of that. So I was just like, I was pretty straight edge too. I didn't really have an interest in it.
I can agree with that. Michael holds the straight edge position of Strange Americans, except for in Virginia.
Strange Americans are like playing a show, and we all have a band meeting before the show starts, and they're like, okay, who's gonna drive? And somebody will say like, oh, I'll drive, and inevitably I'm the one that's like not drinking much, so then everybody's like, oh, Michael's not drinking much, he can drive at the end of the show.
So we know you'll deliver us safe.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, you talked about a bunch of different bands. How would you say, Yes and Korn and all of these bands and TLC have influenced you as a performer today? Like how do you draw back from your history in music through what you play today, do you think?
That's a good question. I think that a lot of the prog rock that I listen to, yes, Rush, Dream Theater, some of the Tool, even like later kind of like the Mars Volta and the Radiohead. Radiohead isn't really prog, but more, yeah, prog-ish, progressive. I think a lot of that comes through my playing still because I'm really drawn to odd time signatures and kind of like taking different parts and almost like taking two contrasting parts and trying to like shove them together to see what happens. Because if everybody's playing the same rhythm, which often is appropriate and most listenable, sometimes it can feel very like we're all holding hands and walking down the street and it gets a little boring. But if there's two maybe conflicting or contrasted ideas that are laid on top of each other, it feels more like a conversation to me. So I think that is maybe the biggest thing that I've taken from my time in interested in progressive rock that still shows up in my playing today.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the words, but it's something like your lack of comfort with mundane drumming. I think it is like finding different ways to play in the same space with the same feel, and so being somebody that plays with you, that's definitely something that I appreciate. Because at times I'll be sitting over there and I'll be like, oh, that's different and that's cool, and it fit in the same time and it was the same feel, but it was something different. And it's I mean, how much time do you spend practicing? Like, what are you just flat by the seat of your pants, or?
It depends. Just practicing and getting better at my instrument and making sure that I can do things with my hands and making sure that coordination is good, or I'm trying to increase how fast I am, or I'm trying to better understand the tone of my instrument and how to, like, for example, I like to tune my snare drum pretty low and kind of like gushy. And
is there a drummer that did that made you think you wanted to try it, or where'd that come from?
I don't know. I think it came from not liking jazz snare drums. Jazz snare drums are super crisp and tight and high pitched, and I just remember like I remember not liking them.
Can you think of a modern day pop band where you'd hear the snare of and you'd be like, oh, no?
311.
Okay, fair enough.
Just like that drum tone.
I saw them live. I met them. I won tickets to a 311 show on the radio.
Oh, really?
And backstage meet and greet.
Dude, I bet that was fun. They're good. Weird. They're a great band. They play together well. It's just not my aesthetic choice.
Are there any other live shows through the years that really stick out to you, or any other songs that you put on your playlist there that you have behind them?
Let's see. I think later on, once I was introduced to Radiohead and Explosions in the Sky, that kind of so I guess I would describe my musical journey on this playlist, at least, into three forms. or three eras. The first era was everything that I was listening to through my family, church, or my sisters. And then I got the Korn CD, and then I was like, oh, there's all this like heavy rock music, and I got really into prog. And then the third era was kind of when I started listening to the Mars Volta and Radiohead and bands like Mogwai or Explosions in the Sky. With those bands, I learned that some of these experimental ideas, time signatures or contrasting ideas put together, they can still serve the purpose of a narrative for the song. So with a lot of prog music, it's kind of, hey, here's like an interesting mathematical equation. Let's execute this on our instruments. And I really enjoy that. But I recognize that the playing drums in bands, for people that take pride in the craft of songwriting, a lot of that isn't going to work. So bands like Radiohead, the Mars Volta, Explosions in the Sky, another band that isn't on this list, but I really enjoy is Dirty Projectors. They have kind of like the songwriting universe up front, but there's a lot of these more experimental ideas that poke through, but you're still getting the experience of the narrative of the song. So yeah, does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Remember the time I met you at the station? Your thoughts are on the line. You see me. I remember it well. The stars burned on the water. The ocean grinned to reveal